Okay, good evening. Dinner finished? Or some people still downstairs? Finished, huh? Okay. How about the monks? They still at dinner? I try every evening. I try my luck, Maybe I can sneak in somewhere for dinner, but so far it never works. Actually, you get quite used to monks for eating only one meal a day, or sometimes we have breakfast separately from lunch. At the beginning, sometimes the newly ordained monks find it difficult, but then after a few days or a week or two, I get very used to eat only in the morning time. And in fact, you don't, even if you have a chance to eat late in the morning, maybe 12 o'clock or 1, you don't even need it anymore. You get so used to this 24-hour circle. Nowadays they call it intermittent fasting, isn't it? So the Buddha knew about it already 2,500 years ago, about the health benefits, spiritual benefits. Now finally science also catching up. Anyway, let's pay homage to the Buddha before we start our Dhamma discussion. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Today afternoon was quite nice, huh? Over there, the stupa, Bodhi tree, very interesting. Also, I was very amazed about the climate. It's really good, It's not hot, it's not cool, it's not humid. Quite different from Taiping, where it's always humid from morning until night. And there, actually, the skin's so dry now, quite nice. And also sitting under the Bodhi tree, the shade, and then all the seeds coming from the tree. Did you have that also? Yeah? The blessings coming from top. Very amazing. Yeah. Very nice area. For me also first time Lumbini. Last time when we went India trip together with Father Enkyong, 10 years ago, at that time Lumbini was not included. So they cut us short. So this year we are kind of compensating a little bit for missing out last year on Lumbini. But then also Lumbini itself, it's just this one place. That's the only site, the major site we have here. And then of course we can visit the international temples, but these are also not ancient sites, right? These are kind of 20th century, 21st century. And Kapilavatthu would have been an option, but then also that is so far away. So that's also maybe not worth taking such a long journey. 2 hours driving, 2 hours back, and then half an hour there. Yeah. Kapilavatthu, what is the main attraction, or what is the significance of Kapilavatthu?
Buddha grew up there.
Buddha's place where he grew up. So basically just seeing how it looked. Well, nowadays it doesn't look exactly the same anyway. So in that sense also, I think it was quite nice actually, the adjustment that we made with the schedule, that today in the afternoon we went over to, how is it called, Maya Devi's place, exactly. Yeah. And also some of us stayed back, we had a bit of a rest in the morning, time for practice at home in our rooms, also so good. Now, on the one side, Kapilavatthu, in terms of what is there to see, the sights might not be so special. Nonetheless, the Buddha was visiting his hometown at some point during his lifetime, even after becoming a Buddha, and he did deliver some quite interesting discourses. And if you look at our chanting book, we have two discourses in our chanting book that relate to that incident when the Buddha visited his hometown. And I would suggest that we go through those together and explore. Not so much for the purpose of chanting, but also for finding out what the Buddha was teaching there to his people back home at Kapilavatthu. If you look at page 22, even if you don't have the chanting book here, it's okay. So it's called the Chula Dukkha Kanda Sutta, the smaller discourse on the mass of suffering, from Majjhima Nikaya, number 14. We can skip the Pali and I will just read out a passage from the English translation and then we can discuss it a little bit. Okay? So the discourse starts with, "Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Sakyan country at Kapilavatthu in Nigroda's bark. Then Mahanama, the Sakyan, he went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down to one side and said, 'Venerable Sir, I have long understood the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One thus. Greed is an imperfection that defiles the mind. Okay? Hate is an imperfection that defiles the mind. Delusion is an imperfection that defiles the mind.' So these three things he has understood, these three impurities, the three kilesas, the roots of unwholesome actions by body, speech and mind. Yet, while I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One thus, at times states of greed, hate and delusion invade my mind and remain. So even though he knows these are unwholesome states, he does not want to entertain them. Yet, they do. He says they invade my mind. It almost sounds like an intruder. You have no control. And so you say, "No, I don't want you here." It's like you have a house, but then people coming in and out as they wish. Well, it can feel quite intimidating, isn't it? So in this way, the mind also like that. If you don't have control over the mind, those intruders, greed, hatred and delusion are just walking in and out how they wish. Wow, it's quite scary, isn't it? So, even though he knows the disadvantage, they're coming. I have wondered, Venerable Sir, what state is still unabandoned by me internally, owing to which at times these states of greed, hate and delusion invade my mind and remain. So he's kind of puzzled that they can still come, even though he understands the disadvantages, he doesn't want them, yet they enter his mind. Then the Buddha answers, "Mahanama, there is still a state unabandoned by you internally, owing to which at times states of greed, hate and delusion invade your mind and remain. For were that state already abandoned by you internally, you would not be living the home life. You would not be enjoying sensual pleasures." So he says he would have gone forth already long ago if there would be no greed, no hatred, delusion. What is binding him to still living the householder's life? Probably attachment to something or someone, right? Otherwise, why is he not going into renunciation? So, why are you still living the household life and still enjoying sense pleasures? It is because that state is unabandoned by you internally that you're living the home life and enjoying sense pleasures. And then the Buddha goes a step further and explains, even though a noble disciple has seen clearly, as it is with proper wisdom, that sense pleasures provide only little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger in them is still more. Maybe we stop here. So this is a first very important step. The Buddha says sense pleasures, he does not deny that sense pleasures, nice food, nice drink, beautiful sights, sounds, music, that these provide a sense of enjoyment. The Buddha does not deny that. Of course, he knows that from his own personal experience, even from before becoming the Buddha, especially from that period, as a young prince, being very well supported by his parents, even protected. So yes, he certainly knows a thing or two about sense pleasures. I think many of you also are. You have quite some experience with sense pleasures. But also he says, you see, they provide only little gratification, but also they come with a degree of suffering. Yes, there's pleasure to be obtained from them, but are they really satisfying? Are they really gratifying? For how long? You know, you eat the good food, like here every day we are served with choice food, wonderful. But then a few hours later, the mind's thinking already about the next meal. When is dinner? What will they give us tomorrow for breakfast, for lunch? So how much satisfaction is coming from those sense pleasures? It lasts only for a few minutes or a few hours. And then again the mind comes up with another idea. So it can never be satisfied fully or gratified. And then of course also there's suffering entailed sometimes in obtaining those sense pleasures. Because some of the really good things, some of the really nice things, they are maybe not so cheap. So you might have to travel half the world or half of Malaysia to get the laksa just at the right place, at that one store in Penang that has the best laksa in the whole country. So yeah, you have to take all the dukkha of driving half the town and then standing in the traffic jam. Yeah, that's all dukkha, right? Yet we take it sometimes, voluntarily. And then you eat, okay, first it's nice, and then you eat the second one, and then until you feel so full that you can barely walk or understand anymore. So then also you feel unwell, the body is so heavy and tired, was it really necessary? And then some of the really nice things also, they are not so healthy either, isn't it? So the really tasty food, if you really look at your cholesterol levels and these kind of things, yeah, better don't tell the doctor. So again, they lead to suffering, both in immediate or pretty soon, on the short term, but also long term. So the Buddha says, they provide only little gratification, much suffering and despair. Much suffering also includes the resources that we need to be able to afford. Nice, beautiful sights, sounds, odors, flavors. In order to obtain them, well, some of them can be quite costly, you know. Want to make holiday at a nice place, and not just in India somewhere. It's quite affordable. Well, India itself would be affordable, but the way we make holiday here is also actually quite good already. So again, we have to pay money, we have to invest resources into that. This means you have to work many hours on your workplace, endure abuse or cold and wind and hot and cold weather, or stress on the workplace, all of that, so that from time to time we can enjoy, have a good time, enjoy some pleasures. So the Buddha says we should not overlook the drawbacks, the suffering, the despair, and that the danger in them is even more in those sense pleasures. So this is the first part of overcoming the sense desires, the greed. But then he also says, as long as he still does not attain to the rapture and pleasure that are apart from sense pleasures, apart from unwholesome states, or to something more peaceful than that, he may still be attracted to sensual pleasures. What does he say here? As long as one does not attain to the piti sukha, to the rapture and pleasure that are separate from sense pleasures. What does that refer to? Charm. Wow, okay, there's some Dhamma experts here. So the Buddha speaks here about the pleasure and the well-being that comes from spiritual practice, especially from samadhi. And the Buddha says, as long as one has not attained or access to these kinds and these forms of well-being, the sense pleasures will still have their attraction. It will be difficult to leave them behind, right? Because if that's the only way that I can be happy, by eating the right thing, seeing the right thing, listening to music, that's the only access to joy I have, well, it will be quite difficult to let that go, right? To give that up, if you have nothing to substitute it with. But then, for a person who has access to joy and pleasure that comes from the spiritual path, from the spiritual practice, then it's actually quite easy to give up the sense pleasures that you might not need anymore, because you have access to well-being from another source, maybe even more well-being than the sense pleasures ever could provide. And then it's actually easy to give them up. You would not even want them. Somebody says, oh, let us go out for dining somewhere. You say, thank you, don't need it. Let me just meditate for another hour. You go alone. Yeah, just eat something simple and then win some time. And if you're already happy inside, you're already fulfilled, what's the reason and what's the benefit of going somewhere else for that? But the Buddha also says that it is difficult to give up the sense pleasures if we do not have anything to substitute it with. And this is also the reason why even for the monks who renounce, give up lay life, and this way also many of the sense pleasures also, they don't have access anymore, right? They cannot say, oh, today I want to go to the Mexican restaurant, tomorrow Italian, then Japanese. No. So whatever people provide, whatever you receive on arm's round, that's what you get. Sometimes you're lucky, sometimes not. Currently we are quite lucky actually. So you don't have so free choice with many of those things. So basically you live in a very simple environment. Sure, shelter, robes are taken care of, but then really the really enticing and tantalizing sense pleasures, many of them the monks will not have access to. So they have to leave those behind. But then, as long as there is no happiness or joy coming from the spiritual practice, that's actually a dangerous period in the life of a young monastic, I would say. Because you see, just as the Buddha says, while you give up one type of pleasure, but you have nothing to substitute, this means the sense pleasures will still have their pull, their attraction to some degree, because you have nothing to substitute it with. But once the practitioner can develop the joy, the piti, the sukha that comes from the spiritual practice, then he's quite safe actually. And the risk or the chance for the person to give up the monastic life or go back to sense pleasures, to the household life is much reduced. At least he might not do it for these reasons, maybe for other reasons. There are some cases, maybe the parents are very sick and maybe he has no brother, no sisters looking after him, after their parents. Some of these extreme examples, circumstances, a person might decide to disrobe, but certainly not for sense pleasures, because he has something better to substitute it with. Okay? So when a noble disciple has clearly seen, as it actually is, with proper wisdom, that sensual pleasures provide only little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger in them is still more, and he attains to the rapture and pleasure that are apart from sense pleasures. So both, he sees the danger and has access to the jhanas, apart from unwholesome states, or to something even more peaceful, like the formless attainments. Then that, more peaceful than that, then he is no longer attracted to sense pleasures. Okay. So, are you ready to give up sense pleasures? From tomorrow onwards, only rice gruel for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, 3 times a day. Rice gruel and the banana. So yeah, if you have something better to substitute with, then no problem maybe. But if you have nothing to substitute it with, then we will often choose to stay with the sense pleasures for a while. Yes? Pardon? Okay. You want to say? So to paraphrase the question, okay, overcoming sense pleasures is one thing through the joy of samadhi, but then they can still be clinging to other things, particularly clinging to views, to their own opinions about life in general or about the Dhamma. So how to overcome that? So of course, the medicine of the jhanas does not substitute, or it's not the cure for everything. So that one is particularly powerful to overcome sense desires, but to overcome the clinging to views. Number one, the first and most important step is, if you already cling to some view, then hopefully you cling to right view. Okay? Because nothing worse than clinging to wrong view. It's double dukkha. First you have the wrong view, that's already not helpful. And then secondly, you hold on to it, and people even trying maybe to show you, actually there's another way of looking at it. No. You dismiss the right view, then you have the double disadvantage. So first off, the first step would be actually to develop right view. And that's actually very important to understand the Four Noble Truths. What is suffering? What's the cause? Often we blame others, something happens, something goes wrong, and then we suffer, we say, it's your fault. Especially if you're married, It's always the husband, it's always the wife, it's always somebody else, the children, the grandchildren. Never myself, right? So, identifying what is the cause for suffering. If you suffer, you can ask yourself the question, whenever you suffer, whether it's just a little bit or a lot. Am I clinging to anything here? What am I clinging to? And more often than not, almost immediately the mind understands. Yeah, I see. Okay. Could be a person, an object, or a view, as you say. So you can ask yourself, what am I holding on to? Whenever you suffer, something, you feel some discomfort. And often there's some clinging involved. So this is the first and second noble truth, isn't it? So by using wisdom and using right view, that is already a very important step. Number one, to see and recognize the suffering, but then also to identify the cause. And then, with the further development of mindfulness and wisdom and the Noble Eightfold Path, not just the view is straightened, but also the identification even with right view needs to be abandoned. And even in Sotapanna or higher areas, they still hold right view. It's not that they have no view at all. They still are very convinced even of the efficacy of the Four Noble Truths. There's suffering and there's a cause. There's a potential for liberation together with its cause, the Noble Eightfold Path. So every Arya understands that and holds that perspective. But there is a difference between holding a view and fighting over it or arguing over it. So you can hold a view firmly within yourself, but you don't have to argue with others, right? So somebody you can share, and if the person disagrees, okay, then we disagree, that's also fine. So you don't have to argue over it. So you hold view, but then you don't cling to it. Also, you don't have to identify, this is my view. I'm right, you're wrong. So this would be like using the Dhamma for the wrong reason. So catching a snake, in the Buddha's time, catching a snake and to obtain the counter poison is actually useful. So you can get a snake and then you milk it from the tooth, and then you can produce the counter poison in case somebody gets bitten by the same snake. But then if you catch the snake not at the head, but at the tail, what will it do? It will turn around and bite. It's the same as the person is using the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings, for arguing, for debating, for winning debate, for being smart and defeating others in debate, and wanting to be smart, like a professor for Bali and studies, and then knowing everything better than everyone else. That would be like grasping the snake at the wrong side. But if we use the Dhamma for our own practice, internally, and at the right occasion, maybe also share with others, sharing the Buddhist teachings, sharing Bali language, how it works, the grammar, the analysis, how to interpret the meaning, that is very meaningful. So this way we can be a support also to others. So the difference is actually very subtle, it's a very internal one. Whether a person clings to view or just holds it lightly. But that requires practice. And often the Kalyanamitas can support you with that, because even though we ourselves might not see where we hold on to or cling to a certain view, But then, sometimes your wife, your husband, they can see it. Or your Dhamma friends, they might also be able in a discussion to identify where we hold on, especially to a wrong view, and then in a conversation they might be able to direct us in the right direction. So, many ways of straightening one's view, but yeah, it's an important part of the practice. Any other comments on the sutta we just read about the sense pleasures never being satisfying, gratifying? What's your experience from that? Do you agree with the Buddha? Don't agree? There's this famous rock singer, Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger, for which, what was the band where he performed? Is it the Rolling Stones? Ah, yeah. There's this very famous song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, right? Mick Jagger sings and says about himself, I can't get no satisfaction, right? If Mick Jagger, you know all about his lifestyle. He has access to all kinds of sense pleasures, much more than most of us here. Alcohol, drugs, girls, all age groups, from the young girls to the grandmothers, whatever he wants. Luxuries, great mansions, whatever he wishes. He has it, he can have it. Yet he says, I can't get no satisfaction. I can't be satisfied. I get something, I want something else. I want more. More of the same thing, or something better. The mind is never contented. Even Mick Jagger, who has so many things, and has access to all of those things, if even he cannot be satisfied, we don't even have to try even. That bath, we don't have to try even anymore. He has tried it already. So it's actually a very good lesson. If somebody who has tried that really for years and decades, and yet he cannot be satisfied, well, that's a lesson in itself, isn't it? So sense pleasures clearly are not the path to contentment, gratitude, well-being that is sustainable. So if you really want a sustainable form of well-being, then maybe another path is more sustainable and more beneficial on the long run. The path of Dhamma practice, of meditation, of letting go. I often give this simile. For example, if you have something like this cup here, it's quite a nice cup, with tea or something inside, and then if I hold the cup here like this, well, it's not heavy, but if I hold it for long enough, I can feel a little bit the weight of the cup on my hand. If I keep holding it, it becomes already a little bit painful in the shoulder. So there's dukkha, right? In Bali we call dukkha. What do I need to reduce the dukkha? What should I do? Let go, put it down, or drink it probably. But you're right. Either way, reduce the weight of the burden that I'm holding here. And if we lower it, even now I feel already less pain. If we burden it, put it down even further, it's less and less. And if we put it down completely, no burden at all, no dukkha anymore. So the solution to the pain, to the suffering, is letting go. Letting go gradually, slowly. And the more you can let go, the less dukkha. But you see, the cup is still here. Yeah, I don't have to push it away. It's still here, I can still use it, I can still take it any moment. In the same way, in the Dhamma practice, we don't have to push people away. We don't have to push material things away. There's no problem in the items. There's no problem in relationships. It's our attitude towards them that creates the problem. If you have an attitude of craving, of clinging, that creates the suffering. If you have an attitude of acceptance, of, yes, being together, but not clinging, not expecting to be together forever, well, at some point I will have to separate from this dear cup here. We know that in advance. Or the cup might even break at some point. Surely it will break, right? This cup is here now, maybe it will not break for the next half a year, we don't know. But sooner or later, every cup breaks. In fact, if you think back at human history, India has a very long history. Where are all the cups? Where are all the cups that parents, grandparents have used, and generations back of hundreds of generations of humans? Where are all the cups? They took them with them. Well, they're all broken. They're all broken. They've disappeared, disintegrated. The same for the other items, of course. So even when you have a new cup, you can already see it as already broken. Because the potential with birth comes death. You make something new, you know sooner or later it will break. That does not apply only to cups, of course. It also applies to our own body, to our mind, to relationships, to friendships. Sooner or later, they will come to an end. Some sooner than later, some later. But latest, by the time of death, we have to separate from whatever is dear, beloved, and pleasing, isn't it? So that's a law of nature. Things change, things are impermanent. And this is a law of nature, just like gravity is also a law of nature, isn't it? But then, often we find ourselves fighting against it. Like, we don't want things to change. We want to hold on to things and say, no, my partner must be the same. The one I met 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it should be the same nowadays. You have changed, you know? How come you have changed? Well, probably you yourself also have changed, right? Not only your partner has changed. So everything changes. But if you fight against it, we are fighting against the law of nature. And you can imagine, if you fight against the law of nature, who will be the winner at the end? Ourselves or the law of nature? So the way to live with it is by understanding the law of nature. Things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, non-self. And then go with it. Go with the flow, so to speak, rather than fighting against it. So you see, we can still use the cup. We can still be in relationships, but we don't expect them to remain stagnant and permanent. So we allow things to change and to adapt, and then we adjust and go with the flow. So in this way, the dukkha of holding on becomes less and less and less. Okay? Just like holding on to the cup, create suffering. If I want to reduce my suffering, I let go gradually. So very interesting, the Buddha here pointing out the drawbacks and dangers in sense pleasures. So this is just what we have missed out today when we didn't do our journey to Kapilavatthu. So that was the discourse given in Kapilavatthu. So you see, in 20 minutes we covered the whole 4-hour journey. Would have been quite a waste of time, you know. And Kyung dragging us all the way to Kapilavatthu, just that we learn the same lesson, then we come back. But at least we have personal experience of dukkha then, you know. Actually, going by bus is quite enjoyable. Don't you also think so? Looking out the window and seeing the lifestyle and the incredible also how close people are living, not just together among humans, but also together with all kind of animals. So there's a house, and then the goat comes out the door and goes in, and the cow just next to the door, and they're all living together, and dogs. In Malaysia also I see quite a lot of stray dogs, but I've never seen so many stray cows. There's a completely different dimension here. So, okay, interesting. But then also I find almost inspiring, you know, the closeness, and people don't feel bothered by that. So you can see also our own conditioning where we might not feel so comfortable. The same happens in Malaysia. You think, wow, what's going on here? But then, you know, I would assume that for people living here, growing up here, the conditioning is different, and it's completely okay and normal. So what we think is good or bad might be quite different for somebody else. That's why it's also we have to be very careful of imposing our own standards on other people or other countries, other cultures. Because what might not work for us, okay, it's probably true to say that you might not want to live in exactly the same circumstances than some of the people we see out the window. Yet, that does not necessarily mean that they are having a lot of suffering. Or maybe if you fill out a questionnaire, some of them might score higher than ourselves on a questionnaire of how much suffering, how much happiness do you have. You know, if they're good relationships, they get along well with their neighbors, the children are playing with each other, quite nice, you know. Nowadays, how our children are not playing anymore with each other, other than online. Yeah. So I don't know. I would be hesitant to put any value judgment about what is better, what is worse. So in the end, everybody has to decide for himself. Does this feel right for me or not? And then actually the sutta that we just read, it continues, or there's a logical continuation in Majjhima 53. I think we still have a bit of time. We can explore that also together. Because that was also delivered at Kapilavatthu. It's called the Seka Sutta. When a noble disciple has thus become one who is possessed of virtue, who guards the doors of his sense faculties, who is moderate in eating, who is devoted to wakefulness, who possesses 7 good qualities, we stop here for a moment. So the Buddha speaks here of a noble disciple, or a disciple of the noble one, it could be a disciple of the Buddha, who is in possession of virtue, so he keeps at least the 5 precepts. How many of us are keeping the 5 precepts? All, hopefully. How many are keeping the 8 precepts? Yeah, okay, also quite a number. 222, we checked last time already. How many? Last time it was just me. Today, hopefully, it's the double amount. 222 precepts. 227, sorry. Yeah, some precepts I'm not so strong at it. Okay. So, 227, thank you very much. So, purity in virtue is fulfilled by keeping the 227, 5 or 8 precepts. Check, okay? Then furthermore, he guards the doors of his sense faculties. Meaning to say, when he's going around, he's not just looking here, looking there, jalan. No, he guards the doors of his sense faculties. He keeps the eyes downcast. Especially, it's actually a rule for the monks also. When the monks go in a village, they're not supposed to look at the shop windows and see all the people walking by. Hello, how are you doing? Playing with the children. It's not suitable for monks. So monks usually go with eyes downcast, mindfully, serene. That is more appropriate. So then also moderation in eating. So again, knowing the right measure. Yes, we have to eat to maintain the body. That's okay. But then also knowing when to stop. Okay, I think that's just nice, just right. Not overeating. So knowing what's measure at the meal. What is the next practice? Devoted to wakefulness. Yeah, not indulging in sleeping. So nice, this soft mattress. You're already awake, but roll over an hour at a time. Who wants to go out in this cold weather? So kind of indulging a little bit in sleeping and rolling over. So again, being dedicated towards wakefulness. What else? Who possesses 7 good qualities and obtains at will without trouble or difficulty the 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind, the adhicitta, and provide a pleasant abiding here and now. So a person who possesses all these things, he is called one who is in higher training, one who is in higher training, who has entered upon the way, on the path. What kind of path could this be? The Noble Eightfold Path, exactly. His acts are unspoiled. He is capable of breaking out, of hatching, capable of enlightenment, capable of attaining the supreme security from bondage, meaning is capable of attaining Nibbana. So what are the practices that the Buddha has mentioned at the beginning? Starting with virtue, guarding the doors of the senses, moderation in eating, wakefulness. They are often summarized in the Buddha's teachings as the gradual training, the gradual practice. So these are core elements of the spiritual practice that the Buddha quite often actually highlights. And then leading all the way to samadhi states, piti, sukha, and pleasant abiding in the here and now. And then interestingly, he says a person who practices like that, his eggs are unspoiled. So like a chicken or a hen who wants the chicken to hatch, the eggs are undamaged. So they are capable of breaking out, capable of enlightenment, of attaining to supreme security from bondage. And the Buddha gives here a simile. Suppose there were a hen with 8 or 10 or 12 eggs, which she had covered, incubated, and nurtured properly. So she protects the eggs, sits on them for many hours, even though she did not wish, that my chicks might pierce with their shells, with the points and their claws and beaks, and hatch out safely. So the hen, even if she does not make the wish, let my chicken hatch, let it come out safely. Yet, the chicks are capable of piercing their shells with the points of their claws and beaks and hatching out safely. Yeah. Why? Well, because she puts in the right conditions, right? She protects it, she keeps the eggs warm, so naturally they will hatch. Whether she makes the wish or not makes no difference as long as she puts in the right conditions. So too, because when a noble disciple has thus become one who is possessed of virtue and all the other qualities that we mentioned above, who guards the doors of the sense faculties, is moderate in eating, is devoted to wakefulness, possesses the 7 good qualities, obtains at will the 4 jhanas. Such a person is called one who is in higher training, who has entered upon the way. His eggs are unspoiled. He is capable of breaking out, capable of attaining Nibbana. So here the Buddha highlights the practice that leads to liberation. Starts all the way with very simple things, like virtue, but then also goes to the deeper elements like wakefulness, sense restraint, and even then development of samadhi. So where are we on this ladder? On that gradual training, on that gradual path? At the beginning, in the middle, or at the end? How about wakefulness? Yeah, I think wakefulness is quite good, Don't have much time to sleep the last few days. Because Enkion is dragging us from one side to another. Yes? Yes, 7 good qualities are not mentioned in this sutta. I was also wondering already. Do you have a recollection of what they could refer to, the 7 good qualities? Sapurisa Dhamma, Ariyadhammika,
Sada, Sila, Chaga, where? Sada, Sila, Chaga, and then the
7 factors of enlightenment. I don't disagree. The Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Sevens, has maybe 140 suttas about potential candidates for the 7 good qualities. So it's a bit hard to know. Actually, that would be an instance where it could be helpful to look at the commentary. The Pali commentaries would often clarify from other suttas what is the meaning of this or that term. So unfortunately now here in this booklet we only have the Pali, not the commentaries, but this would be then the logical next step. If you have time, maybe overnight, tomorrow, I will look up what is the definition of the term, and then tomorrow I will let you know what are the 7 good qualities. Okay? For now, you're right. You're also right. You're also right. Okay? Maybe we leave it at that, and this way we can all be right. Okay, so where are we? Well, you see, even though it's a gradual training, it doesn't have to mean that you start the first, and only when you have accomplished the first, you can start with the next one. So only when you're perfect in your virtue can you start with guarding the doors of the sense faculties. It's not like that. So you can do them side by side, and in fact it's even meant to be cultivated simultaneously. The same with moderation in eating. Yes, you don't have to be perfect in the previous ones, and only then you start with that. And until then you just overeat every day, because you're not yet at that step. So now surely we can start with that already. Wakefulness and so on. So but this is the scaffolding, the ladder, the path of practice of important elements that the Buddha often highlights. The gradual training, the gradual path. And then the simile of the hen. What does the simile of the hen, in your understanding, what does it signify? What is it trying to tell us actually? Yes, the importance of protecting the eggs, but there's a second message I can see there. What is the second message it tells us? Any idea? Everyone has the potential. Everyone who cultivates those things, right? If you don't cultivate those things, well, you could still say you have the potential, but that potential doesn't help you much if you don't practice. It's like we all have the potential to become professional tennis players, but if you never play tennis, it stays at the potential level and will never manifest. So likewise, for many people who have the potential for awakening and become a Buddha, yeah, but it always stays a potential. Because if you don't do any practice that leads there, then it's almost not even meaningful to speak of a potential actually. But then the potential awakens by putting those practices in. And then we can meaningfully speak of, yes, there's a good chance, potential for a person to develop these states and attain liberation. But there was another aspect also I see here. Yes?
Can I explain? Because I've experienced seeing the hens where my mother read. Okay, how they hatch. Because when they lay egg by egg in egg until after a certain amount, okay, and then they start to sit on the egg, and then they keep rolling the eggs inwards, make sure it's fully covered.
I see.
And then they will sit on it for quite a number of days. 21 days. Yeah, to the extent they won't even eat the food.
Wow. So do you really protect the eggs well, take good care of them?
Determination.
Say again?
Determination.
Determination. Yeah, very determined. Determined, putting in the effort, protecting all these factors together. It's the same as the spiritual path. You determine to do something, and then you stick to it. Repeat it. Protect it. Adjust. You know, sometimes you think you will do it in a certain way, but then later you figure out, no, it's not working. You have to adjust something. So in the same way, like the hen has to roll over the eggs. First it's like that, but then he has to roll it over. No, it's not yet perfect. So in this way also, we adjust the practice. Okay. Anything else in this that you see here? Khanti, patience, patient endurance, because, well, maybe the hen has also other things to do. Now it has to sit on those eggs for hours and days on end. So yeah, she is very patient, cannot follow her other hobbies.
When the conditions are right, we do not need to worry about the result. The result will come naturally.
Right, I think this is also a very important message here. Because it says, even if the hen does not make the wish, may chicken hatch. Still they will hatch. So you see, the wishful thinking is not contributing much. It's actually the putting in the right causes and conditions that produce the result. So a person who constantly just thinks, I want to be enlightened, I want to be enlightened, I want to have jhana. Yes, having the aspiration is okay to have as a starting point to motivate the practice. But then we actually have to do the practice to get there. So just keeping in mind, I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to be a sotapanna, but then not doing the practice, it's not going to lead anywhere. The chicken will not hatch. Whereas a person who might not even think so much about it, yes, the aspiration is there, but then he really cares much more about putting in the right conditions. Then naturally the result will come. Sometimes also in the Dhamma practice, especially meditation, it's not so easy, right? You want to be mindful, but then the mind has other plans. So, like the monkey mind. We've seen so many monkeys the last few days. Mind also like that. It likes to jump around, isn't it? Cannot sit still. So you want to keep it, the mind is doing its own thing. So we have to train it again and again. So over time, with increased training, it sits still at some point. The Buddha gives a bit of simile, like a dog. You put him on a leash, at first it wants to run in all directions. But you bind the leash on a pole, or post, or tree, and then sure, the dog will still try to run in all directions at first. But eventually it realizes, well, I'm not getting anywhere. What is it doing then? Sits down, just next to the tree. Lies down, sleeps, stays there. It's like the mind that has been trained. Every time it wanders, you bring it back to your meditation object, to your breath, or to the loving kindness, or to the six senses, whatever is your meditation object. So you bring it back. Next time it wanders, you bring it back again, and again and again. Over time, at some point the mind learns, actually, I don't have to go anywhere because it always brings me back. Then it just stays there. And it's actually very easy because the mind voluntarily stays with the meditation object. But of course, again, that needs training, consistency, patience, all these qualities. Yeah. There's also the famous teacher from Thailand, Ajahn Chah, and he also often encountered people who are very motivated to practice. And Westerners and Thais coming from all walks of life to see him and wanting to practice many hours on end. And some also very determined, they can be quite strong-headed, to say, well, I will not move, I'll just sit down and meditate 9 hours or longer. I'm not going to get up from my seat. And some get so obsessed with not moving and just sitting still. Sometimes you can even injure your knee and get some permanent damage. And Ajahn Chah at some point said to one of his disciples, if sitting still for a long time would be the path to liberation, then all the hands would be fully enlightened. Right? Because they can sit still for hours and days on end without moving. If that's the path to awakening, then they would all be in Nibbana already. So obviously, just sitting still is not enough. It matters much more what we do with the mind. What is the mind doing? Is the mind also still, or only the body? So, in fact, meditation can be done not only in sitting, isn't it? We can do walking meditation, standing, even lying down. So all four postures are completely capable of practicing mindfulness. So it's not limited just to the sitting posture. What's your favorite meditation posture?
Lying down.
Okay. And what's your favorite sleeping posture? There's actually an ascetic practice, a Tutanga practice, where some monks also, they take a vow of never to lie down. So even for sleeping, they will sleep in the sitting posture. And this is meant to arouse wakefulness, because you can imagine if you sit all day long in meditation, but also for sleeping, sleeping won't be very comfortable. And you're not tempted to just sit or meditate or sleep much longer than really necessary. Because after a while your knees, the back become unpleasant or even painful. So the person will be ready to get up, maybe do some walking meditation. So it's meant to promote wakefulness. So this Tutanga practice of never lying down, even while sleeping. But then one of the monks also from the Ajahn Chah tradition, Ajahn Chah Saro, who undertook that practice actually for a long time himself. And at some point he realized not only the benefits of the practice, but it also comes with some drawbacks. Because what can happen, you see, normally, for most of us, I assume, when we get tired and we want to sleep, into which posture do we go? We lie down. Not only now, we have been doing this for years, since childhood, since we are baby. Whenever we lie down, we go to sleep. Sleeping means lying down means sleeping, right? But now, sitting, now the sitting posture becomes also the sleeping posture for the meditator, right? So there's no more clear line between wakeful posture and sleeping posture. Because if you make your sitting posture also into your meditation posture, but also into your sleeping posture, the mind doesn't know anymore. And then it's very easy, you try to meditate, and the mind will become drowsy and think, oh, it's sleeping time, huh? So it's actually one of the drawbacks that can come if you do this practice for a long time, that this clear distinction is not there anymore. So it's actually a good thing to have this sleeping posture reserved a little bit for sleeping, the lying down posture reserved for sleeping, and in this way not blurring the lines too much. So that's why also, and often meditation teachers also don't recommend really using too much the lying down posture. Yes, it can be used, but then either it might negatively impact your sleeping quality, because now you teach your body also to be alert while lying down, or if you don't make it so far even, then you might often just fall asleep while meditating, while trying to meditate in the lying posture. I guess that's the most common experience. But the Buddha says all four postures can be used.
When you are dying, you have to be mindful. But then if you are lying down, you also go to sleep very fast.
Yeah, so it is. But anyway, dying or not, everybody will die. But the mindfulness at the time of dying, I think, is a bit overrated. Of course we want to be mindful, but if you only try to be mindful at the time of death, it's not going to be so easy. If even now, during normal wakefulness, when you're healthy, when you're fresh, when you're young, you're not dying, you're not at the end of your life, you're not losing all your family members, your property, your body. If even during normal circumstances, you find it difficult to be mindful, good luck accomplishing that at the time of death. That would be very difficult, isn't it? So I wouldn't bank my money on the last mind moment. Some people say, oh, the last mind moment is so important to have a good rebirth. So it doesn't matter so much how you live, but as long as you can keep your last mind moment really wholesome, you'll be good. Some people really speculate a little bit like that. So then, okay, you can live your life however you want, no need to keep the 5 precepts and all these things, And then at the last moment you will have beautiful thoughts, loving kindness, compassion, and go straight to heaven. Is it really so easy to do that? In the middle of a car crash, or when the body is in aches and pains, and the mind is weak, the body is weak, we are not at our best at that time. So this is not the time then to... we can try, we should try to be mindful, of course. But we might succeed or not at the time. And this dilemma was actually also a situation of Mahanama, one of the Buddha's disciples, who was quite concerned actually if he passes away in the middle of the city somewhere, when he goes around and there's so much things happening, you can see from our short journey how many things are happening on the road all the time. If he contemplates and realizes, what if I pass away at such a moment, when I'm muddle-minded, when the mind is not clear? So what will be my future destiny? He asked the Buddha. So he was quite concerned. And the Buddha said to him, don't worry. For a person who for a long time has cultivated the mind in virtue, generosity, learning the Dhamma, wisdom, the mind will go upwards. That, in other words, he's saying, don't worry about the last moment. Your mind will go upwards, regardless of whether you're muddle-minded or not, because you have for a long time cultivated all these good qualities. You don't have to worry about the last mind moment. That's not going to harm you significantly. So it's actually very relieving, isn't it? Because I see also many of us here, You've been listening to the Dhamma for a long time, for many years even, and you've been developing wholesome qualities, undertaking the precepts, being helpful, being generous. So many of those qualities we have. So even if at the last moment or in the hospital or wherever we are, maybe the mind is not at its best, no worries. The mind will go upwards. It's like a law of nature again. Like the good karma will bring the mind up. The bad karma, of course, will bring the mind in the other direction. It will lead to a bad rebirth. The Buddha gives a simile: if you have a rock or a stone and you throw it into a pool of water, will it float or will it sink? Quite naturally will sink, right? And even if the family members or the friends would say, float, 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 the rock will not float. Likewise, a person who has lived his life breaking the precepts, being a kind of crooked person, cheating, betraying others, harsh speech, and all these things together, all that bad karma, that unwholesome karma, will lead to an unfavourable rebirth in the lower planes of existence, either as a hungry ghost or animal or even in hellish states. So it's a law of nature. It's like the rock that sinks to the surface of the pool. But the Buddha says also, in contrast, if you have, for example, a jar that is filled with oil, and then you sink that jar of oil inside the pool, what will happen with the oil? Will it sink or will it float? The women all know how that works, because you're cooking, and so you know the oil will come to the surface. The men have actually no idea. But yeah, you're right. The oil will come to the surface, quite naturally. So this is likewise the good karma that we have done throughout our life will naturally produce a favorable rebirth, either as a human being or in a divine celestial plane. Again, no need to worry, it's a law of nature that the mind will go upwards. And even the Buddha says that even if a person has enemies and they stand at the bank of the funeral, so to speak, or at the bank of the river, and they say, the oil, go down oil, I don't want you to come up to the surface. But the oil will still go down. Likewise, if your enemies shout, no, I want you to go to hell, don't go to heaven, the mind will still go up, right? So it doesn't depend what others wish for you. It depends on the good karma or not so good karma that we have made that determines our future destiny. So these are very useful lessons that the Buddha has left behind for us, not only in Kapilavatthu, but also many other places where he's teaching us what can we reasonably expect after death for our own life. Okay, I think I keep it at that for my sharing. If there are any questions or comments, we can invite a little bit for Q&A style. If there are any questions about what we have just discussed or something related. Yes, Mei Ling. There's no leash, right? The mind is a flexible thing. It arises and ceases, and a new moment arises and ceases. So when we use this simile, so it's like a metaphor, where you say, bring it back, bring the mind back to the object. It's not that the mind was going somewhere, was traveling somewhere else. The mind has an object. The object can be the breath, or the object can be fantasizing about the past or the future. So these are all objects of the mind. So when you say bring it back, it means return to the object that you have previously determined. Returning doesn't mean turning around, it means just changing from one object to another. So in that sense, we bring it back. That's the meaning of bringing back. Yeah. Also, the mind is not going anywhere. The mind is not going to another object. It's just a mind. It's not traveling. It doesn't need a visa. None of that. So it's very easy for the mind to travel large distances, isn't it? Like when we go from India to Nepal, we have to go through 3 checkpoints. The mind can travel very fast. Single checkpoint is just gone already. Where are you? You don't even notice it. So it's amazing. So for example, now if you want to think at your parents' house where you were growing up, how long did it take you to travel from here all the way back home to your parents' house? Instantly. So in fact, it's not even meaningful to say the mind was traveling, because it just changed the object. It was not going from here, then flying, and then landing, and it just immediately changes the object. The same with mindfulness, or present moment awareness. It's sometimes translated, right? It's a very common term, especially in our meditation circles. Be present, be mindful. Be in the present moment. Be aware of what is happening right now. Really, closely speaking, accurately speaking, you cannot be aware of the present moment, because you have only one mind. And the mind that is present, for example, it sees the cup and the book on the table. It's the seeing experience. This is one thing. But then the awareness, seeing is happening, it's a separate moment. In fact, any moment where the eye really sees, or the mind is aware, seeing, these are 2 different things. Seeing itself and the mind aware of seeing is not the same. So it kind of jumps back and forth. So a seeing experience and the mind knowing seeing is happening are 2 different things. So when we say present moment awareness, it actually means awareness of the immediate past, of just the previous moment. This is what we conventionally call present moment awareness. So that's as close as it gets. Because to have a real present moment awareness, you would have to have 2 minds, or 10 aggregates, not just 5, You need 2 consciousness aggregates, 2 perception aggregates. Then one can do the actual seeing, and the other one is aware of seeing. Then you have one camera doing the seeing, the other one watching the camera. We don't have 10 aggregates. I don't know for you, but I have only 5. So there's no real-time presence. It's always looking back at the immediate past. That's as close to the present as you can come. Okay, any other questions, comments? Yes?
What function of the mind is involved in remote viewing?
Remote viewing of what?
There are some people, like in the US, they use people who can sort of see Jupiter, see Saturn, see the spy, there's a spy in Russia.
With the telescope? With the telescope? No. Okay. Yeah, we call it fantasy. I agree. It's amazing what the mind can do, and especially when the mind is powered by strong samadhi. It's like a microscope, or electron microscope, where you can see things that the normal eye cannot see. Likewise, the mind that is very powerful can perceive and discern things that are far in the distance, or can hear things that are beyond the normal hearing range. So that can be trained and practiced based on the 4 jhanas and further cultivation of samadhi. Then for some people, they can develop that ability of seeing or hearing or communicating with devas. These are all psychic powers that one can attempt to cultivate. But the Buddha did not outline in detail how it works. What is the physics involved there? Is the mind traveling there, or is the image arising in his mind? The Buddha didn't say how it works. In fact, quite the opposite. He says, if you try to figure out the scope of psychic powers, you will go crazy. Or your head will split into 100 parts. So it's not possible to understand that with our rational mind, the functioning of how that works. how it works. It works. There are many mysteries that we can't explain yet. But it seems that some people have certain special powers, faculties, that go beyond of what we can nowadays explain with our conventional scientific understanding. So I wouldn't dismiss those things, but then also some of those practices, they are not essential for the path to liberation. So you can become perfectly enlightened and awakened and purified from all defilements without even without recollection of past lives. Also without being able to communicate with devas, without being able to see what is going on in Russia, either from the television. So these are not preconditions and necessary features of arahants. Some develop these extra psychic powers, but there are also many, maybe even the majority you can say, who do not have those additional powers. But the most important of all the psychic powers is asavakkhaya, the destruction of the taints, the elimination of the defilements. All arahants have achieved that one. And that's the one that really counts. Everything else is a bonus. Don't spend too much time on developing the bonus without having the essentials together. Because some people, they spend a lot of brain power and try, and you can spend months and years on end trying to develop those qualities and those capabilities, because it doesn't come so easy for most people. And then at some point you might have to ask yourself, is it really useful, beneficial? If you have not yet even attained maybe stream entry, how much time am I going to spend for developing psychic powers? Yes, it might be fascinating, but not really helpful. Yes. Very much so. So because the previous moment and the next moment and the next moment are quite similar to each other. They have the same object, the same feeling, the same perception. So the illusion of continuity can very easily arise, because the previous moment feels very much the same as the next. Like right now, if you check your body, okay, it feels in a certain way. And a tenth of a second later, it still feels quite the same, isn't it? It's not completely different. Now you're happy, then you cry, then you're happy again. It's not like that. So it is kind of very similar. And yes, there is change, but it's much more slow and gradual the way we perceive it. But there are actually separate moments arising and ceasing, but because they are so similar, we don't notice actually that these are separate units. So therefore the illusion of constancy or continuity comes to be. But with enough mindfulness and discernment, one can actually see also the momentary arising and passing much clearer. So that can be developed in meditation especially. Yeah. I don't know for you, but today I think many of us, we have seen many things, we have experienced many things, and also we have accumulated a lot of wholesomeness, a lot of good karma. From morning until night, basically, by not just, yes, many of you have been helping with offering food to the monks, preparing the dishes, preparing for the journey. Also, great thanks to Enkyong and the whole team supporting him, for supporting our pilgrimage and making it such a smooth experience for all of us. I think I can speak for, especially for the monks, but hopefully also for all of you, all the efforts that he is putting in, and the accomplishment of what comes out of it is just amazing. Let's give him a big sadhu at this time. Sadhu, sadhu. So I hope also he's willing to share the merits with us, because I don't have much to share on my own, but That's why I'm coming here. I'm really hoping the whole day already for the evening when we come together with him to sharing of merit. And then of course then we went over to the place where the Buddha was born, over here in Lumbini, and witnessed that place, meditated together, practiced the Dhamma together. Oh, how many moments, how many wholesome, skillful, kusala moments have arisen? 3, 5, 500, a million, who can count them? Uncountable wholesome moments. So all these moments, they're adding up. And all that wholesome energy, the Ji, as we say in our Chinese tradition, that is a support, of course, to our own practice, but also we can make that available for others, especially our departed relatives, friends, and all beings. Whoever would wish to rejoice in the good deeds that we have done, we can share them. We can invite them to happily rejoice. Should we do that? Yes. So in this case, let us take a moment. We can close our eyes first. You can close your eyes and recollect the manifold wholesome deeds that you may have done today. It can be something small, like having opened the door for someone, having passed a spoon or a fork to someone, giving a hand, whatever kinds of service or whatever acts of kindness we may have done. Visiting the birthplace of the Buddha, alongside with all the gratitude that the mind has experienced at the time. Gratitude towards the Buddha, his teachings, and all these moments of meditating together, of listening to the Dhamma. Let us make all of that available to our departed relatives and friends and all beings. Let us recite together. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyadayo. Idang no nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyadayo. Idang vo nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyadayo. Ittavata amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. And lastly, let us also make an aspiration so that the good karma we have accumulated will also support us on the path to liberation, so that our chicken may hatch and that this good karma will support us on the path to Nibbana. Please repeat after me. Idang me punyam asavakaya vahang hotu. Idang me punyam nibbanasa paccaya hotu.